Anyway, you're watching the Dave's Gone By Facebookio Podcastio Programmio of the stream. It is our 948th episode, and more importantly, it is our 19th annual celebration of all things Broadway, particularly tied in with the fact that the Tony Awards are tomorrow night in Lincoln Center's Koch Theater, and also broadcast first part you can watch on Pluto TV, and then if you have Paramount or CBS television, you can watch it there. But we do have our next guest lined up and waiting in the waiting room to be talking about another Broadway category. Let me let her in while I give the intro to her. So our guest is Carey Purcell. Not only was she a former features editor of Playbill.com, a place about which I know a little bit. She's a member of the Drama Desk and a voter for the Outer Critics Circle as well. And she has written for places like American Theater Magazine, Vanity Fair, Theater Mania, the New York Times, and she's even written a book that we'll talk a little bit about called From Opera Ben to Fun Home, A Cultural History of Feminist Theater, which came out in 2019 and is available from Rowman and Littlefield Books. But before all that, she has a category to talk about today on The Tony Show. We welcome, for the first time into the neighborhood, Carey Purcell. Good morning and welcome, Carey.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely delighted. And so, yes, we want to talk about your book, but first let's do the Tony, because Tonys are tomorrow. This is the show. So your category, just before we had Zachary Stewart talking about score of a musical. Now you get the other side of it. You get the book, the words, the thing that strings everything together, which is a rather reductive way of putting things. So I'll read the nominees, and then we're off to the races. So for best book of a musical, we've got Christopher Diaz for Hell's Kitchen, Becca Brunstetter for The Notebook, Adam Rapp and Justin Levine combining on The Outsiders, Shayna Taub for Suffs, and Rick Elise, Water for Elephants. So, your thoughts on all of them, and Andy, Carey Purcell.
Okay, Hell's Kitchen, I thought the book was the weakest part of the show. I thought that the show was elevated by this fantastic cast. I can't say enough about the cast. We'd be here until the Tonys begin. But I felt like it was kind of a paint by the numbers bio musical, and I didn't feel a strong connection between the two love interests. It felt like it just suddenly they were in love and we didn't see anything building up to that. And speaking of love interests that I didn't feel connected to, The Notebook. The whole point of that story is we're supposed to really care if these two people end up together. That's why we're there, and that it's a tragedy if they don't end up together. But again, I felt like we were told that they'd fallen in love by the end of one song, but we didn't really see them fall in love. Granted, I am not exactly a romantic comedy. I'm not the target audience for it. I've never thought that The Notebook, the novel, the movie were really love stories with more codependency. But I felt like I was told, oh, these two people are in love. But wait, when did that happen?
Actually, I just want to pop in there. What about, let's say, West Side Story, where two people fall in love in a moment? I think we buy that. How come we don't buy it and say, as you said, The Outsider or The Notebook?
To be honest, I've had that reaction too when watching West Side Story, when I've thought, turn off your brain and listen to the beautiful love songs. But the practical part of me is thinking, wait, does he really love her, or is he idealizing her and putting her up on this pedestal that if they didn't die in that tragic, terrible way, she'd probably fall off of at some point?
Because he was already madly in love with this other girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then he dumps her, and he's like, oh, I found the next. Yeah, they'd probably be divorced in 3 years, had the Capulets and that. Anyway, please continue, Carey Purcell.
Speaking of West Side Story, that gives me a great transition into The Outsiders, also a story about social groups, violence, tragedy. I felt much more invested in that one than the previous two I've mentioned, but it felt kind of crammed. There was so much going on, and these, I thought, really great songs and stunning choreography that even though it was a full 2.5-hour musical, I felt like it could have been longer and I wouldn't have been shifting in my seat thinking my back hurts, because there was just so much to explore with this large cast of characters. And also, that's a story that a lot of us can relate to. A lot of us in theater have felt like outsiders throughout our lives. And when you think about economic disparities and tragedies that result from that, that kind of speaks to today's audience. And then
That one a lot, but I'm sensing there's one you liked even more, or you're building to your. So yeah.
that's my crescendo is slowly building. Water for Elephants. I liked that Rick Ellis trusted the audience. They didn't have to explain everything to us. It left things to our imaginations, like literally with puppets on stage representing actual animals, but also with the storytelling. We didn't need to be told these two were falling in love. We could see it, and that trusting the audience is something that I think can feel very risky to writers. But I felt like he really trusted us to go on the ride, to go along with this story and get invested in these characters. But because that show had so many other great elements with the choreography, the acrobatics, I feel like the book got a little overshadowed. But then again, when you go to the circus, you're there for the spectacle. And frankly, I was in the audience kind of worried about the cast. Like, what if one of them falls? I mean, it was stunning acrobatics by that cast. My gosh, I felt like I had to go to the gym straight after seeing that show.
So, but all right. So you're ready for the apex, the crescendo, the climax, if you will, which
Yes.
leaves us with.
Suffs. I thought that it was the best book by far. There's so much I loved about that show. And, given the topic of my own book, of course, the topic appealed to me, but also it I felt like everyone in that stage was a person, not a stock character, not someone who fills in the blanks and represents this subject or this conflict or this demographic.
Well, could you actually tell us what Suffs is about? Because we haven't even really discussed
Oh,
any of the shows here. So, what is
it's
Suffs?
it's about the suffragist movement, and it is not a Hamilton light review of women's history as it was described in one article that I have opinions about. It is about starting in 1913, the women's movement people have already been working for a long time for women's votes. And it presents kind of the newer group of women working and the conflict that they face with the older group who has been working for a while. And it presents the inevitable conflicts of politics that also we can see today of, do we hold out for the perfect ideal situation, or do we sacrifice certain very important things for the overall cause, and then we will keep working? Excuse me for just one moment. Summer cold. One trap that I love that it avoided was, I feel like so often with stories about women activists, they're either presented as only one characteristic. This woman cares about politics. This woman works too much. This woman is a wife and mother and is needed at home. And also it didn't sanctify the women. Often women are presented, historical characters are presented as ideals rather than actual people with flaws. And all of these people felt so richly drawn, so deeply characterized. They all had songs that deepened their characters. And the book worked very harmoniously with the score. It didn't feel like, they had to shoehorn that song in to cover this topic, or, they're talking about this, I know what's coming next. It just felt like an overall smooth, cohesive work of art that complemented each other, but also were outstanding in their own elements.
Are there any musicals that could have been in this category where you would have removed one of the actual nominees and replaced it, or are you pretty good with these?
I was good with the category. I felt like I felt like they were all deserving. Some I thought a little more deserving than others, but
Yeah.
all deserving.
Now, speaking of deserving, people deserve to read your book. So could you, after you finish, I'm sorry about your cold. Could you tell us about your book, From Afra Ben, who was this early woman playwright, to Fun Home, which was a musical from, I guess it's almost 10 years old now, a cultural history of feminist theater. How would you even define feminist theater?
Oh gosh, people have been asking me that since before I even wrote the book, and I feel like the answer still is evolving. I think that it's theater that addresses issues relating to female or female identifying people, and also work that features, it's work that features work by female and female identifying people, that it's, it lets the people who are written or being written or sung about or performed speak for themselves. That it's not, it's, I mean, Fun Home was the first musical written solely by women to win Best Musical Tony, and that was in 2015. It took that long. It shouldn't have taken that long, and it shouldn't be that long again before another work that is written solely by female or female identifying people wins Best Musical. So let's let these people write and tell their own stories. Let's not have an established, safe, well-known person tell the story. Let's have these people tell the stories themselves.
Now, can I ask you, your book is a couple of years old. Do you
Yes.
see a volume two or a reprint where you take, because we're going to be talking to another critic who is delighted and thrilled that in a category that used to have no women in it, I believe it's director of a musical.
Director, yeah.
This year, 4 out of the 5 nominees are women. So
Mhm.
do you see yourself maybe in another year or 2 or 3 updating your book with an extra chapter or something?
I would love to do that if the opportunity arose. A lot of changes have already happened since the book was published. It actually just came out in paperback about a week ago. But I've been really happy with some of the changes I've seen, and I hope that more changes and more evolution will continue. I think a lot of work has come from the reckoning that this industry faced during the tragedy of the COVID shutdown, and I hope that people keep thinking and keep forming groups and keep having conversations that will continue to improve this industry in terms of representation.
Now, can I ask you one more question? I didn't prep you on this, but I'm going to throw it at you.
Oh,
Do you have a favorite all-time play?
Heidi Chronicles.
Ah, speaking of feminist, do you have a whole chapter on that in your book, or at least on Wendy Wasserstein, I would assume? But yeah.
I think it's a whole chapter. There's definitely a lot devoted to that play. I think that play was groundbreaking and timely and sadly timeless too. I remember when the most recent revival had just begun performances, a male colleague of mine was saying that he thought Heidi seemed like she was always on the edge of everything that was happening in the play rather than being a part of it. And I said, yeah, that's the point. Because she doesn't fit these categories of wife and mother or the corporate role or the hippie out in the country role. She felt like she was on the outskirts because the the role a woman was supposed to play at that time was evolving, and she didn't know where she fit in yet. And I thought Elizabeth Moss beautifully captured that in her performance, and I think that what Wendy wrote is still so applicable. And I was heartbroken when that show closed early. I saw it 3 times during its run.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Carey Purcell, this is the first time we're seeing you in the neighborhood. I certainly hope that you will come back for our Tony shows and other reasons as well.
I love
We want to
it.
remind people that people can get the paperback copy now of your book, From Offer Ben to Fun Home, A Cultural History of Feminist Theater. Is it still Rowman and Littlefield are the publishers of the
Yeah.
paperback? And let me ask you, where can people read your current theater reviews?
Um, Everything that I write is on my website, careypurcell.com. If it's published somewhere else, I also include a link to it on that site. You've listed the places I contribute to the most, so that's you can see it there. I'm on Instagram at Carey Purcell Writer, on Facebook, Carey Purcell Author. I am not on X or Twitter. Those are my 2 main ones. But if you go to my site, you can sign up for an email alert, and it will email you when a story is published on the site and never any other time. You will not be sent surveys. You will not be sent advertisements. You'll just get an email that says the latest from careypurcell.com.
There's no Purcell spam. It's just, and by the way, it's Carey, Carey,
Yes.
Purcell with 2 L's,
Yes.
Purcell, careypurcell.com. Carey Purcell, the person, thank you so much for being with us on this Saturday morning.
This was lovely. Thank you so much.
You betcha. Bye bye now. Thank you.